In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
Hi, welcome to Materialise, the Launch Tabletop podcast. This is me getting confused with my own script again because I was thinking I could do it from memory. This is the podcast where we talk about turning game ideas into tangible objects. Today is the 24th of March, 2023, if you live in Australia where I am, and it's episode 19. This week's topic is pitching your board game to publishers, and we have Tricia Victor of Skybound Games with us. All right, so I managed to muck it up. Hey, so
you're getting better. You're getting better at mucking it up every week.
Getting better at mucking it up. No, well, yes,
I like
possibly.
to think of it as being creatively flexible with the words.
The worst part was I got like most of the way through the sentence, and my brain's like, "You're doing really good. You're nailing this." And then I was like, "Hang on, I don't know the next words. What are the next words?" And then I was like, "Oh." So it
Good
all
job,
went
brain.
off the rails. Yeah, great. So yeah, hi Alana, welcome.
Hello. Hi. We had a break last week.
We did have a break last week,
Yeah.
and how you been?
Good. I'm doing all right. How are
good.
you?
Well,
your shells look suspiciously bare.
Yeah, they do. So we're in the middle of. So two things have happened. I've been sick, which is why we weren't last week, and then we're also moving house, so packing everything up. So that's all happening.
It's a bit exciting. You'll be heading to our neck of the woods.
I am. I'm going to be, but in the cooler part of town. I'm going to be on the north side. So that's just better.
Sure. Yeah.
Can we start some kind of like north-south, rivalry?
You just started.
You like West Side Story?
Yeah, you started.
I start. Yes, man, that's fine. Fair enough. But I know that I'm better, so it's okay. I'm happy to start it. That's fine.
Right.
So we're moving up to the north side of Brisbane. Gonna be actually
speaking, it's not even Brisbane, that's Pine Rivers, baby.
Correct. I know, but do we need to really get so specific with the zoning rules because I think anyone outside the area, it's all just Brisbane.
Great. It's all just noise.
So yes, technically Pine Rivers Shire, I think. Is it? Or is it? Or I'm going to be in Redcliffe.
Or near Redcliffe Regional Council.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm going to be in a suburb near Redcliffe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway.
Excellent.
But I last lived in that area. We lived in that area in 2001. So it's been interesting to see how much it's changed in basically 20 years. Yeah. Yeah, so because I worked in the local shopping center, so I'm going to be curious to see how much that's changed and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting. I've got to get used to the heat because Queensland is a lot hotter than down south here.
Yeah, but we have a lot more air conditioning than we did 20 years ago. So.
That's true.
Very true.
And I know that that's been a priority for our house is that we're going to have air conditioning, so it should be okay. Tricia, welcome. This is the first time for me to meet you, and I've heard about you through Kate. I'll do my little pre-written spiel for the introduction so that at least I sound like I know what I'm talking about. So Tricia works in biz dev and marketing for Skybound Tabletop, which is a division of Skybound Entertainment, and they are the people behind many games, including Trial by Trolley, Superfight, Pitchstorm, Kim Joy's Magic Bakery, and heaps of other ones. I actually hadn't really fully been aware of just how, I guess, prolific or big you want to look at the Skybound was until I was looking over the website, preparing to talk to you. And I was like, oh, wow, like they do a lot. Like there's like so much stuff. And it's like, because you do tabletop, obviously, which is the division that you're in, but you've got whole other divisions with like comics and like
we have comics,
TV
we have podcasts, we partner with Universal for movies. The podcast Impact Winner has been on Audible since last year and has been a really hit success for us.
Awesome.
You might have seen our editorial, obviously. You might have seen our shows, The Walking Dead and Invincible. They're based on the comics that we created, and then other creators license them to make them shows.
Yeah,
So.
that's fantastic. I have to. One of my geek confessions is I've never seen The Walking Dead, or like I know of it. I know it's a cultural phenomenon, but like I've just never engaged with it, and I think I'm at that point now. And it's like so many other shows that have long histories where you're like, I feel like I've missed the boat. Like it's just like there's just so much stuff, so much, so many series, so many whatevers. But
it's worth watching.
Definitely. It is worth watching.
I gave up at the point where Negan turned up because it just got nasty. It's like when he took out Glenn, I'm like,
When it got really, really brutal in like season 7 or 8, I kind of petered off a little bit because it did start to get very brutal. But the really cool thing is at the Skybound office, they have Bicycle Girl from episode 1 under the staircase. And so I took the selfie with her.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
There you go. There's a reference that goes like way over my head. I've got no idea what.
Just watch. All you have to do is watch episode 1, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Watch episode 1.
All right. Episode 1.
I wanted to find out what was going to happen with Carol and that whole storyline, and I just, even though Jeffrey Dean Morgan turned up, and I couldn't get past the whole Negan with the bam, bam, bam. I just, we're done. Sorry.
I
Carol.
just kind of want to watch the last season to see everything wrap up and skip like those couple in between. Just because I'm not a super fan of like hardcore violence. So, but I would like to see. I'd like to see how the show ends. Or I can just read the comics.
I'm normally okay with violence, like as in I've watched shows like your Game of Thrones and other ones which have a lot in it, or like Spartacus, which I know is like a bit over the top and silly, but still like quite gory, quite whatever. But I'm finding that I'm enjoying them less. And I was watching some old a few months ago, I was watching old episodes of Columbo, right? The detective series from like the 70s, and they like never show blood. Like if there's a murder, it's always like it's like someone like with their hand coming down to the camera, and then it cuts away, and it's just like you just see some feet or something, like nothing, no. And part of me is just like, I'm kind of really enjoying this. Just like I know the person died, but I didn't have to see everything. It was actually kind of nice. So
I mean, my confession is I've never seen Game of Thrones, so I have. Yeah, and I'm confessing that out loud, so now everyone knows.
No, that's okay. Well, I mean, I confess about Walking Dead. So okay.
But I do enjoy those old things. Like I loved Murder, She Wrote, and I loved Matlock, and I loved Dragnet. And it's exactly for that reason. It's like I love that that someone was murdered, but you don't see this gruesome thing happening. And then you get the mystery of like, who did it?
They had to be a lot more creative with communicating what actually just happened.
Yes.
There's no gruesome autopsy scenes, no photos on the murder board and those sorts of things.
It's funny, even shows like Midsummer Murders and stuff, which are still fairly what's the word, like family friendly for the most part. Yeah, like as in they're still like a lower rating. They've got some pretty brutal murders. Like there's some episodes of that which are like they not only show it, but like the actual murders are just horrific, like what the actual person did, and it's just like, but this is like a show that my mum loves. Like, what's going on with this? And my mum doesn't like gore or anything like that at all. Anyway, this is definitely about board games.
Just quickly though. So, did you?
And thank you, Alan. Thank you for supporting me.
Did you get around to watching some of Poker Face yet? Because I know that you were like, oh yeah, Columbo. Did you watch Poker Face?
No, I haven't done that yet. I've seen numerous people say that it's got Columbo vibes, but
like there's a little bit of going on at the end, but it's like Columbo. He turns up and it's like it kind of explains the whole thing and pieces it back together like a shaggy red-haired Sherlock
It's just
Holmes.
one of these situations where there's so much stuff. I'm just
there's a lot of stuff.
And so like I've kind of been splitting my time between watching things just for comfort that I've seen before, like just shows that I enjoy. I've been rewatching some old Star Treks just because I've forgotten them and just to remember. And that's reminded me how
TNG.
I've been jumping with TNG, Enterprise.
Enterprise
what else did I do? I can't remember, but I kind of was just picking and choosing. And for me, that was a big change because in the past, I've been kind of one of these people that's like, oh, you got to start at the start and work your way through. And whereas now I'm just like, oh, I've only got limited time. I don't care. I'm just going to randomly, this one looks interesting. I'll pick that. And it actually made me wish that the streaming services had like a random button where you could pick, okay, like let's say a show that's got heaps of seasons. You can just show me a random Friends episode or a random,
HBO
whatever
Max
episode.
does have that.
Does it really?
Yes,
There you go.
they
We don't
do.
have HBO Max in Australia, unfortunately, but yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, all of their content gets licensed to one of many other services that we do get here.
Because there is something super comforting about just watching your old favorites.
Hmm.
And like in the past year, I've probably watched at least half a dozen of my old favorites. And I had watched all of Big Bang Theory again from start to finish. And then I realized there was a randomized button. I was like, wait, what? I went, after watching all of the seasons, I discovered it. And I was like, oh,
damn it. Yeah.
Didn't have to watch it in order.
That's great. All right. We have a small bit of housekeeping that we're just going to attend to, and then we'll move on to the main proper actual chat. So Kate, do you want to share the housekeeping update?
So we had a new feature launch this week on Launch Lab, and it is the shipping cost estimator. So here is a project with a bunch of things in it that I put together in my account. Once you've got some components in your thing, like I've got some boxes and stuff, and you'll notice that
this is Launch Lab for those who don't know.
None of these have any artwork at all, and the shipping estimator doesn't care. So you can go, well, tell me how much this thing is going to cost. So here are all of my things, and if I want 1 unit, and that's been there for ages, and you can see the price breakpoints. So blah blah blah. But this is the new part. So it's going, well, where would you like to send it? So I'm actually going to send it to myself because my details were already in there. I want 4 units of this. So it's going to weigh about 1.62 kilos. And to ship that to me with good old Australia Post will be just shy of $30 US.
And
but if I wanted to send it to Tricia,
Beverly Hills. Yeah. Or just pick a random.
What's our postcode?
90210. 90210.
Every Australian from the 90s knows that one.
Yeah. It's the only American postcode, I think, from memory. It's like none of
exactly.
So we've got a whole lot more options. We can send it via the USPS for slightly more. And then there's a whole bunch of options. If it was super, super urgent, we could absolutely just go to town, and there we are with $250 worth of shipping. So that's new. Hope people will find it useful because we got lots of comments saying, please.
Yeah. Means you can see costings prior to getting to the order page.
Yes.
And
because
previously, in order to get to the order page, you had to have artwork. So it became a bit of a roadblock for kind of scoping out costs. Yeah.
So we might as well do a brief ad while we're talking about it. So that's for Launch Lab, which is our print-on-demand game service. And if you want to check it out, you can go to launchtabletop.com to sign up and have a look. And then if you do decide to make an order, use the code Materialise at checkout and you'll get 20% off before shipping. And yeah, so that is for Launch Lab.
Yes.
All right.
Well, let's get into the good stuff.
Let's get into the good stuff. So, Tricia, we'd already talked about you working at Skybound, but how did you kind of end up in the tabletop industry? What's a bit of your, some highlights from your journey, maybe, of how you got there?
Yeah. So my journey's actually been a very long journey because I started playing games when I was very, very little, about 3 or 4 years old. And I grew up just loving board games, and I actually had like Fireball Island and Lie Detector and IQ 2000 when I was a kid. So I didn't just have your basic Monopolies and Saris and things like that, but I did play a whole gamut of games growing up. And I was a very, very busy teenager who always had a club or was always at a friend's house till pretty late. But there was one day a week that my mom, it was like a mandatory family game night. It was like, you cannot go out. You cannot have friends over. Like, this is the one night a week that we're going to play games and we're going to spend time together as a family. And so that went by through all of high school, all 4 years. And so that was just like a little thing that was instilled in me of okay, this is the thing we're doing. And of course I loved it because I loved board games. And then going into college, I met someone my sophomore year of college, and he was already working for a publisher, AEG. And so he kind of brought into my world some just newer games that I hadn't seen. Zombies by Twilight Creations, Carcassonne were the first couple ones that I had played that were just a little outside the realm of the things I'd been playing during high school. And I was like, oh, these kind of remind me of Fireball Island when I was a kid. And so in college, he'd just bring me these bags of games from all these publishers. And he'd be like, here, have this bag of things. And I would take this and be like, who wants to play these? And my friends are like, what are those? And I've spent most of my life forcing my friends to play. Growing up, I'd be like, we're going to play Monopoly. And even though I know you don't want to play, we're going to play anyways. And they were all good sports about it. Like they went along with it, and they were very good about it for me because it was something I just was loved and super passionate about. And so that turned into college years. And I would ask my friend, like, well, how do you work in gaming? He's like, I don't know. Like, that was just his response. I'm like, I don't know. And throughout the years, I would ask him that because I started working in human resources after college.
Okay.
And so like every couple of years I'd be like, but how do you do this? And he's like, I don't know. And then one year he called me and he's like, hey, I bought Greater Games Industry Reference Magazine. Do you want to write some reviews and get your foot in the door? And I was like, yes, please. Yes.
Wow.
Like jumped on it. So like, this was just like a little side hobby for me while still, working in HR and working in corporate. And soon after that, I started going to the different convention circuits and just introducing myself. I'd walk booth to booth and be like, hi, I'm Tricia Victor. And is there anything you need? Would you like a game reviewed? Is there anything I can do to help you? Is there anything you're lacking? Just let me know. Here's my business card. And so I just solicited myself to everybody. I'm like, whatever you need, I might be able to help you with that. So I did everything from writing reviews for them. I would write oriented reviews for Golden distribution that were geared towards retailers on like how to sell the game and who's your audience that you're selling it to. And if they like this game or this game, then they're definitely going to like this game as well, this new game coming out. I ran social media for Tabletop convention that was in Texas for several years. I helped some companies run their Kickstarters and ramp up their social media because they didn't have social media. And then I was running social media for Action Phase Games. And later that year, they sold their company to Indie Boards and Cards. And at first it was like a very small, just they acquired the company, but I was just a part-time person just doing this on the side. And so I was just still doing my job. And then several months down the road, the person who purchased Action Phase Games was like, hey, I actually think I could use you for this and this. Like, here's a contract. And I actually did an interview for that job because I was kind of already doing the things like on the side because the other company that was bought out, Action Phase Games, was still just paying me. And so then he's like, well, you might as well just work for me as well. And so that's how I got hired in. And then at my prior job, I had done customer service. I was doing convention logistics for about 13 to 15 shows, traveling to about 8 of them a year myself. I was doing a little bit of marketing, social media, and I ran over 31 Kickstarters.
That is phenomenal. Like, that is so much stuff. Yeah, that's amazing.
You know how there's that saying, if you want something done, you give it to the busiest person in the room? That's Tricia.
Yes.
I've got like 25 questions in my head. So
pick one.
How about pick one. Okay, so we'll start focusing this in on the topic of the episode. That way, maybe we don't derail too much. I do have a pre question because I don't understand. What's biz dev? What does a biz dev do? What does it mean? Can you explain it to me?
Good one.
Yes. So at least what I'm doing from my perspective of what I'm doing with biz dev is I am a person who is looking for game pitches, but not just game pitches. I'm looking for co-publishing opportunities, licensing opportunities where we can license our IP to somebody else so they could create a product. I do the back and forth with legal and negotiations. And so that is the stuff that I do with biz dev in my scope at my job.
Cool. Okay. So you're working both with other publishers as well as with designers directly.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Which obviously makes a lot of sense while we're talking about pitching games then, because that's the whole thing of part of what you do. So for those who don't know how podcasts are made sometimes, how we do podcasts, how I do podcasts is I'll get a guest or, make the initial contact and say, do you want to be on the show? And then it'll be like, what do you want to talk about? And this was one of the topics that came up. And so I was like, hey, I'm interested to learn about more, how to do pitching better and more of it. So that's why we're talking about it. But I didn't know the full backstory. So what is something that you think people often forget when they're doing a pitch, they're coming either to you to do a pitch, or you've been a part of, you've seen other pitches happening or whatever. Do you think there's like a common kind of one or two things that people seem to just to forget to have prepared or to do?
So I've seen, so I've met people in person, like at conventions, where they walk up to your booth and they just want to hand you their sell sheet and be like, here's my game. I have a game pitch for you. So let's start there, because I think that's an important one.
Yeah.
A lot of publishers have no time at conventions that are just open times. So the most important thing, if you want to pitch games at a convention, is to have your sell sheets with you. But if you want to have a meeting, to reach out to those publishers ahead of time and actually schedule time with them. Because we usually have a full gamut going on of that and other interviews with other things happening, to where we don't have time to listen to your pitch. And it might be a wonderful pitch and we don't want to miss out on it. And so reaching out to any publisher ahead of time is the best move when you're going to conventions, just so that you can get a time slot with them.
How just in I know it's probably going to be like, how long is a piece of string, but what would be a normal kind of like pitch interview, like time slot that people, is it like 20 minutes? Is it an hour? Like, is there a standardized kind of time slot?
I always try to do at least 15 to 30 minute time slots. It doesn't necessarily take 30 minutes, but it just depends on like how much of the game you also have developed at that time. Because I'll have someone just bring a sell sheet and they'll explain their pitch and we ask some questions. We might have a back and forth dialogue, and that might be a shorter conversation. And then you have people who also bring their actual prototypes, and they have prototypes already ready. And if we're really interested in it, we might actually want to have you lay it out and just like show us a little playthrough in just a quick 1.5 minute, 2 minutes tops. I'm like, this is how you play a game turn in this game.
Okay. Interesting. So does this also mean, and this is a leading question because it happened to me, so this is where, does this mean that if possible, it's good for a game designer to have a copy of their game that they can just give you on the spot if you said, hey, we want to, take it to review further, or is it better to, not better, but, or does it not really matter? Is a sell sheet kind of all that's really needed, and then you just contact them later and say, hey, send us through a copy? Like,
so the world has changed a bit. So I would say yes and no. So if a publisher is really, really interested, I would say always have a couple for the publishers that are really, really interested, so they can take that back with them. But a lot of times publishers just want to take the sell sheets back, mull over it. We don't always want to take your things unless we're decide like, hey, we really want to look further into this, because prototypes cost a lot of money, and we don't want to, take that away from you for someone who might be really interested in that prototype. But however, during the pandemic, there's also Tabletop Simulator now. And so you can create a mod, and a lot of times we just ask the designers to send us a mod, and that way we can play on that, and you're not spending your resources, and we don't have to send it back to you then, and it makes it a lot easier.
Interesting. Does that also mean that you are doing more online pitches, or not? Is that not really a thing for your company? Like,
oh no, we definitely do. A lot of times with the pitches that I receive, I'll ask them like, hey, if you have a TTS mod, please send that as well. And that way we can take a peek at it. Usually it's without the designer, and it's just our team that will evaluate and play through. And we just ask them to send us the rules ahead of time so that we know what we're doing. The other day, we actually had a pitch that was a really amazing game. And it took a few hours because it was a longer game. And unfortunately, it's a little out of our catalog, but I recommended a few other publishers that I think it would be a really good fit for, and help make a connection with one of them. And that's the other thing I just want to point out. And I think this is really unique to the tabletop industry. I was talking to my mom about this, is like, I think we all have the mindset that like a rising tide brings up all ships. And it's not an industry where like, I saw this, but I don't want anyone else to see it to make a good game out of this. It's like, oh, it might not be right for me, but I'll tell you who it's right for, and you should pitch it to them because I think it's really good for their catalog, or I think it fit really well. And I think everyone kind of reciprocates and does that in return, because it's just one of those things where like, why would I publish something outside of my wheelhouse? But I also want this person to succeed. And so here's the direction that we always give that kind of feedback on, like, here's where you can go with this. And I think that's really kind of a cool thing about our industry.
It is very, very friendly and inclusive. It's not generally outwardly, just outright bitchy about stuff like that. It's
I appreciate
refreshing.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think most of us, I'm kind of in multiple kind of spheres in my life, like different industries and communities where I kind of jump between, and the big professional one for me has been graphic design. That's kind of been my professional background, and it is interesting how some of these kind of different places are way more kind of cutthroat, or they aren't really as or they're just or some of it is just simple. They know that there's really small opportunities for reaching people or customers or whatever, and so they kind of feel they need to be it's just a one of those things. Or you've got obviously just regular business, which can be very kind of not very nice to each other. But I agree, the tabletop industry has really felt different now. I'm not saying obviously there's problems arise and conflicts happen, but broadly speaking, it's definitely, I think most people just want to see everyone kind of succeed in some way, and so trying to help each other do that. And I think what you said about finding the right publisher for the game is I've seen that happen as well. Where publishers or designers have played a game and gone, oh, I think this would really suit XYZ. That's kind of up their alley. They do, either that size game or that style of, art or whatever, whatever it is. And so, okay, this leads into maybe some aspects of the pitch. What would you say is kind of essential for somebody to include in a pitch? If let's say they booked a meeting, they're going to be seeing you either online or at a convention, they've got their 15, 20-minute kind of slot. What's essential for them to kind of have ready to show you?
Be prepared with a sell sheet. And, the thing is, and this is just my perspective because everyone looks for something different in a sell sheet. So it's not necessarily what I'm saying is not the golden standard for everybody. But personally, when I see a sell sheet, I love to see a little log line, just a paragraph about what the game is, the components, how many players, age, time, contact info. And some sell sheets warrant, they can show a little gameplay. And if they can, it's nice to see the little just structure of that. I actually had pitches that I saw earlier today that someone had recorded on YouTube. And I had not received YouTube ones before, but I found it very interesting and actually very helpful because they just introduced themselves for, 10 seconds in the beginning, tell us the title of the game. And then they were able to visibly walk everyone through that game turn. And they were all very short. Yep. They were 3 minutes or less. And that gave us great visual, which was really awesome because, in person, that's great. But when we're getting just the sell sheets over email, it's a little harder to visualize sometimes on your own. So not that everyone has the opportunity to make those, but I found that really cool and really interesting. And I hope maybe that becomes a future trend that we see.
I have not. So part of my game design career has been that I haven't done a lot of pitching. It hasn't happened for me in the major part of it. I built a relationship with Alana and Alan early on, and they published some of my games, and so we kind of just I didn't need to go through the pitching process so much. But I did one earlier this year, and because the other dirty secret from me is that I've never made a sell sheet yet. it's on my. It's one of those things I need to do because I need to have them done because it's really important. But I've just never done it. I've never been in a situation where I've done it, and I've either it's just not happened. But there was an opportunity to do a pitch at a convention in Australia here earlier this year to a local publisher, and I had booked in and was doing it, but I did it very last minute because I wasn't sure what was going to be happening with me going there and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, at the end of the day, I said, okay, I'm going to go. I messaged them and said, are you still accepting, bookings for pitches? And they said, yep. And so they were like, can you just send us through something so that we can kind of get an idea about the game? And I didn't have the sell sheet, but what I did do was I recorded a 5-minute video. And so I just did a 5-minute video that did that step through of what I had, because for me, I felt that matched my strengths better. That was actually a better way for me to kind of, and I just did that. I showed the components, I showed a basic turn, and it was 5, so it wasn't 3. I'd need to work on editing that down to get it to 3. But they got back to me and were like, oh, that was really great. They were really thankful, and that meant then that when we met in person, they had more kind of idea about what was going on from that.
I really do think it's important to play to your strengths. So that's good on you for doing that.
Thanks. Yeah, but I think it's what to your point though. It is kind of opening up the fact that we have more tools. Like most of us have a smartphone that can probably record semi decent video. You know, like I just had a cheap stand, which is down here. You know, which just like a cheap standy thing that I got off I think from like a Facebook ad or something. It's like it's terrible, but like it holds a phone, it has a light on it. You know, like it records.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be something fancy as long as it portrays the information that we need. That's great.
Yeah, and I think that's a I wonder how that's going to go in the industry, if that's going to become more common, these video pitches. Because the other thing was that at the time that I was doing it, I didn't end up submitting, but the Cardboard Edison Awards were open, and they are a video requirement. Like that's how you submit to them. So when I did it, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll send the same video, in for that. I didn't end up pursuing that. But I think it is gonna, I think video as well as the sell sheets and the stuff is, the TTS mod. I need to get better at that too. I still find some of these online tools a bit overwhelming to set up the game.
TTS to me, TTS is a little clunky, but it's not super bad. And once I think you get the hang of it, you'll be great at it.
And I also know that like I've experienced in my like playtesting communities that there are game designers who are more than happy to help you set it up on there, like either for a fee or for free, depending on where they're placed and what their how complex your game is. So I think it is possible to get help, especially if you are a part of a community, like a game designer community in your kind of area, or an online one.
I've heard that as well. And I think that's also just goes back to that thing about the tabletop community is like everyone wants everyone to succeed. And I think that's such a cool thing. And one of the things too that and this is not something I made up. This is something I heard years ago about pitching games is like, and with a pen, but I don't have a pen, so I'll use my lip stuff. It's like, what did you make this out of? And what does it do? And how does it do it? And it's like selling a pen, and it's like how to do an elevator pitch and like how to sell a pen in an elevator in that like 30 seconds to 1 minute tops. That's like, I think the most key is like, how can you get all the information out when people don't have a ton of time to hold their attention? And it's like, take any object and just practice with that. And that's how you should pitch your games.
So that raises a question for me, because games, obviously, even simple games have lots going on often, like in terms of to convey to someone. How, like, is there some kind of heuristic or like rule of thumb or whatever that can be helpful to kind of distill, like, how would I know what key points to focus on to try and say, hey, this game has like, because I think the way I would default would be normally like a key mechanic, for me, what I feel is maybe a point of difference, and the target, audience, like, who it's aimed at. That's sort of where I try and focus on. But not all games can be easily distilled into those like little things.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are definitely important to hit. Like we do want to know the target audience that you're trying to hit. Just a couple of marketable points of like what kind of mechanics, or what is the main gameplay? Is it like a nonverbal thing where you're, doing something in silence like the mind? Or is it something where you're being rowdy and it has, things where you are passing things back and forth? Are you doing area control? Just a couple of those simple things, because there's area control. There's, there's, I'm blanking on all the things.
No, there's heaps. And there's
all of the things.
Deck building.
There's hundreds of mechanics.
That's actually the one I was like, I'm like picturing the deck, and I was like, what is the word for it when you're shuffling cards? There's the drafting mechanics. There's so many mechanics. So telling us what those mechanics are in the game. And then also just driving home like, okay, this is something that can be played in 15 minutes, or this is, and I think this is something that's just light strategy, or this is a gateway game, or this is like a medium to heavy Euro, just so we have that in mind, because that'll also help us as like, does this fit in our wheelhouse? And it gives us those key bullet points, because like, I am going to look at so many, like I had probably 150 submissions, and I first need to look at like what fits in our wheelhouse. And then after they fit in our wheelhouse, what is something that's not necessarily super close to anything that we have right now in our catalog. And that's like, and then you start to narrow that focus down from the broad general thing. And so just, it's taking those key things and then filtering them.
Yeah.
How much do you care about? So I was just going to say, how much do you care about things like playtime, number of people, and age recommendations? Are those super important for you to know up front?
I mean, it's not 100% necessary. It is helpful though if you have an idea so that we can say like yes or no, we agree with that. I mean, that can always change too if it needs any dev, because depending on if it's like a complete game that we're barely changing anything on, or if we say like, hey, we think this is really great, but we think if we do this, it might broaden that audience a bit. And so, it's not 100% necessary, but it gives us a general idea, like a starting point.
Yeah.
On where you're going with your design.
Alana, did you have any questions for Tricia?
Yeah, actually. So you talk about the kind of things that you kind of mentioned that sometimes you might be looking for a particular type of game or whatnot. Is there a way that a designer would know that you as a publisher are looking for something specific for your, like, looking ahead to the next, say, 12 to 24 months, that you're looking for a particular type of game or style of game, or, don't bother pitching of, some kind of like 4X, 10 player monstrosity. We're actually looking for a 2-player gateway game or something.
Yes. So I think this is twofold. So on the designer's end, I always hope that they do just a little bit of research ahead of time. Like before you email, before you go to convention, before you go anywhere. If I'm pitching to a company that does super social games, they're highly interactive, I'm not going to pitch a Euro game where we're not talking at all and we're kind of playing in our little silos. Like, I think they should do a little bit of that background research, because you want to know the audience you're pitching to ahead of time. But also I think that, I think that's like, for me, I think that's the number one key thing, is knowing your audience. And then just,
and I guess the easiest
so
way.
much.
But I guess the easiest way that I tackle it is I try and look at the other games that publisher has published and kind of go, oh, okay, this publisher's done a lot of small box games that are very kind of focused on kids. All right, cool. That's, if I've got something that's in that, I'll try and target them. I mean, obviously, I don't know what that publisher might be wanting to expand into, so they may be interested in different things. But at least you can look at their current catalog and kind of go, oh, okay, does my stuff sort of broadly fit? We had a comment from Chad, which
I was going to say. Go ahead.
So Chad said player count's way more important than ages. He was having a conversation the other day about a design that was limited to only 2 player counts, either 4 players or 6 players. And you need to know that up front to assess potential marketability concerns, which I think is absolutely true.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And age is the whole, 14 plus. That's often an afterthought for a lot of games, having been on the back and people going, oh, we're just going to slap 14 plus on the box because then we don't have to worry about any of the testing and stuff, which is totally not true. But, nice try. Just,
I will circle back to that in just a second. Yeah. I was going to get into more deep dive about the things that designers should do, but I actually should point out on the publisher end, a good publisher, if they're put out a call on social media for games, they should be putting out like, hey, I'm looking for mass market, I'm looking for party, I'm looking for light strategy, I'm looking for gateway. The publisher should also be upfront about what they're looking for, so that they can help those designers be like, okay, that's not something I should submit to right now. Just so there's transparency.
Because definitely, I know when we were publishing, we were looking that sort of 12 to 24 months out, and we would have a few slots that we needed to fill. And so we knew the kind of games we were looking for as well. So it kind of, for us at least, it made sense to, not worry about pitches for things we know we definitely aren't going to publish, because it kind of just wastes everybody's time.
And to Chad's point, I think player count is also very important, because if you're a company that wants to, only have games that are a certain range, then for party games, having a wide range is super important. Can't slide 14. Yes.
I would like to see a light card game about unicorn parts.
I was gonna say exactly what Chad said, is that and a lot of jurisdictions, it's also how a customer, like the way that the different legal systems look at it is, could a customer reasonably expect this to be a game for kids? Like, does it look like a kid's game? Does it sound like a kid's game? Doesn't matter what you've written on the box.
Which happens to be a Skybound property. It looks...
I'll make it bigger.
Well, childish isn't it good? It's not childish, but it's very...
It's fun and colourful and approachable.
You know, 6-year-olds are going to go, oh, look at that. You know, there's a...
Yeah.
Is the cat in here? Yeah, look, there's the cat.
Right, because there's adorable animals.
The kitty. And there's a panda eating, you know, macaroons and cake.
The example I always use is you can't get a teddy bear and fill it with razor blades and then slap a, 18 plus on it. Like that doesn't make any sense. It looks cuddly and fluffy.
Is cocaine okay though to put inside the teddy bear? Is that more acceptable?
Jeez.
No, that's not going to help the kids sleep. I don't
so that's not what the movie's about. The movie's not about a teddy bear stuffed with cocaine.
And
no, it's about an actual bear.
And slapping that like 14 plus on because you don't have to do testing does not work anymore. There are certain countries that even slapping that label on there, they will not receive their games if there is not the documentation for testing, especially in the EU. They have such strict standards. And so publishers, if you're not doing that, you should be doing that.
Yeah.
If you're concerned about it though, my understanding is most manufacturers will offer testing as a service that you can request.
They will.
Our manufacturers
arrange it. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, they arrange it for us.
Yeah. And it's in the greater scheme of costs for the entire project, it's not that much. It takes a little bit of time. If you're working with a good quality printer, you'll be fine. You just got to have that little thing that says, we tested for these specific things. If you're not going to Europe, you don't need to test for Europe. If you're not going to the States, you don't need to test for those things. But the various jurisdictions have slightly different concerns. If you want
it is also cheaper to test with your manufacturer, as Kate is saying, and let them arrange it for you, than going backwards after you have everything and then having to be like, oh, now I need to test it. And that costs a lot more money. So
when it's all sitting in a warehouse in customs,
build it into your P&L and just do it with every game. And it's like you won't even blink or think twice about it. And it just becomes part of the things you're doing. It's worth it.
Yeah, and then also let's just quickly talk about markings on the box because this applies to testing as well. Don't slap markings on the box that you don't understand. If your game does not have small parts, don't put the crying baby on there. I have seen games that have gone, oh, crying baby, we should have that, right? Gone to testing and they've gone, you haven't told us what the crying baby's for. Fail. When there wasn't actually anything in the box.
The crying baby is literally, they take a tube and they will stick components into this tube, and that simulates like the esophagus of a small child. And so if you don't have things doing that and testing for that, then you don't need to put that on your box.
It's a deck of cards and a rule book.
Don't need the crying baby. But the thing is, if you have that and you haven't specified what it's for, you will get a fail. So know what those things are for. If you don't know what they're for,
I did the wrong thing on this one.
Yeah.
Thankfully, this is not.
Ask questions.
Just checking my old games I did myself and like, oh no, I've got crying babies, but didn't have anything.
Ghostbuster baby.
This does raise a question though. Is like how can this is obviously a tangent from pitching, but that's okay. This is useful. This is good stuff. If someone like you don't know what you don't know, right? Like if you don't like I didn't know about that tube test for the swallowing. I didn't know that that's what it meant until like this talk. So is it best to talk to your if you're a publisher, is it best to talk to your printer, like the manufacturer, about that? Would they have that information, or how do you actually get that information? Like
your manufacturer, because if you tell them like here's all the regions we're shipping to, when they're working with that, they know all the different codes and things that you have to get approved for the different zones.
But it's also important to say they're not lawyers, they're not legal specialists.
Sometimes they know, not all the time. They're really good at material testing and knowing where the materials are sourced from, but they may not know like specific unusual political, geopolitical, or like other kind of like requirements when you're shipping into a country. So it depends what the final form of your game is too.
Yes,
So-
it does depend
Yeah.
on their knowledge. It depends. I've done due diligence where I've also done the research and I've talked to different fulfillment centers and asked them what they needed as well. So you can always do that just to
Yeah,
double check so that
yeah.
you're covering all your bases.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
things like if
often
you
the
want to
distributors,
sell,
will know.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if
Often
you
the
want to sell on
distributors will
Amazon-
know. Sorry.
Sorry, you go. I'll just
I was just going to say, often the distributors in the country where you're sending the games to will have a pretty good idea, and often because they're the ones that sell to the retailers. The retailers are the ones that have to sell it to the public. So the kind of, if you think back from that chain, if you work your way back up the chain, often you'll find someone along there that's got a pretty good idea of like local requirements. Some manufacturers, it comes from personal experience, will try and sell you fake certification certificates. It can be fraught. Because ultimately, once a manufacturer has shoved it on their dock and you've collected the game, often they don't care anymore. So it's kind of your problem at that point.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, the testing people have to know what the various requirements are for the various jurisdictions so that they can perform the tests for those specific things. So I know for Wonderland's War, there was, was it Pitch Storm possibly? Anyway, one of those things, there was a specific thing that we had to test for California something or other. There was a proposition something.
California has a lot of props.
Yeah.
It's like Prop 65, I think, actually.
Something like that. And
with,
we were like,
hazardous, cancerous materials. Yeah.
Want to test for that. And the testing people are like, actually, you don't need to worry about that. But you're going to North America, so you need to test for this. And we were like, great, haven't even heard of that. So ask the testing companies. Those people know everything. They can't tell you what the law is.
Or just ask Nick.
Well, even Nick. I've had lengthy conversations with Nick about it. And he's like, well, not really sure. And we've sat down and read the legislation. And it's very dense and hard to understand.
Yeah, it can be, definitely. But Nick's point is very, very important, basically, that just you got to know your market.
Yeah.
And the US requirements are actually really ugly.
Also, shout out to Nick. He's an awesome partner.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
And he's also my boss, so I think he's great too. No, I do think
that was
great.
excellent sucking up.
I'm so sincere, aren't I? No, it's perfect. But that raises a question though, because like if you have different labels for different markets, does that mean that you do different print runs? Like you'll have a print run that has the markings for a certain region, and then a different print run for a marking for another region.
I've never come across anything like that.
Yeah, it'll be like here's
really.
like a small baby next to this marking next to this.
So you just
marking.
have them all. Or you just have them all.
Like everything it needs to cover goes on one box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be big. So you've just got to have, the specific requirements for each jurisdiction altogether. I mean, exactly. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Well, because then it doesn't matter.
Now I'm
you
picturing
can.
game box. Now I'm picturing like the flow on from that NASCAR idea is that we have sponsors for our game boxes, so you can have just all other logos over your game boxes as well.
Yeah, here's a good example.
Space.
There's just like a whole bunch of stuff in a row. Yep, just slap them all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, some rule books already are like phone books.
All right, we are getting close to our time limit. So what I'm going to do is say that we can have one more question each, and then we'll move on to the ending stuff. So, Kate, you're waving your hand there. Does that mean you've got something to say?
I really wanted, because something we were talking about was, you were talking about it's important to know what a specific publisher is interested in. If you've got 4X and they do party games, probably not a good match. Would you regard someone rocking up to a pitch with their lovely prototype, or not lovely, as the case may be, and they're pitching you something that is obviously not going to suit your company? Would you regard that as a red flag? They haven't done research, or is that more of they're just super keen and they're desperate to talk to someone? And if that's not a red flag, what is a red flag?
Yeah, so I hate calling things red flags because I feel like I don't want to speak for necessarily everybody. One of the things, though, that flags me is if a designer uses certain words like in a pitch and they say my game is like, and they name a game. If it's like that game, then why would you want to publish a game that's already like another game? And so that to me is a red flag. Like they've maybe, I don't want to say copied, but like
can I just respond to that?
Yes.
Because there was advice about 10 years ago, which was that was what publishers wanted. They said that the main conventional wisdom that I heard back then was, we want to have a game that's like X, but with Y, addition to it. So it's like Catan, but it's got drafting, or it's got something else, some other thing in it, right? Some other thing. And so the theory being that players then can go, cool, I like game X, I'm looking for variation on game X, so this is variation on game X, or this is like a new kind of addition to that theory. And I think, but then I feel like in the last kind of 5 years, the pendulum swung almost the other way, where there seems to be this kind of like, if you mention that the game is like another game, that's kind of terrible. You shouldn't say that at all, and it should be completely sound like it's totally unique.
So
and,
I would,
I'm just like,
so I'd rather hear it in like, this game is in the vein of like, if I like this game, I would also like this game, and this game. And so I don't want to hear that it's very similar to another game, but I want to know that if I like these 3 games, I'm also going to love this game a lot too. That it has the same, it brings you that same kind of feeling and emotion towards it.
Yeah, it's sorry.
So the opposite of red flags.
Comments coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The opposite of red flags are green flags. Are there any things that people might do or say where you go, I really want to have an in-depth conversation about this game?
I think it's just kind of the things we covered. I think doing your homework and knowing your audience and who you're pitching to. I think it's really cool when a designer knows like the market that they're trying to sell to, the audience they're trying to sell to, the wheelhouse. I think those things, just having all that information in your back pocket is just icing on the cake for us, because then it kind of makes our job easy. Having just that really great pitch, whether it's a sell sheet with the TTS or just a sell sheet by itself, if it has really all the really good information, or having that video that I saw, I think was really cool. I think those were all just like having and being just super prepared. And one of the things I think too is like, I think maybe it's like actors where you get a lot of rejection. But I think there's always a game out there for somebody. And so like one of the things I always just say is like, just because I don't like a game doesn't mean there is an audience for it. And so I think that's the same thing with pitching too, is just finding the right person and the right publisher that your game is going to fit with.
Isn't there also like a famous story of like Frank Herbert with Dune? He pitched it to like the original book. He pitched it to hundreds of publishers and like got all these rejection letters, and then eventually it was like a company that was known for making car manuals. And the owner was really into science fiction, and so they were like, "Oh, we'll give this story a go. Like, it's not in our normal wheelhouse, but we'll try it out." And then obviously Dune, as we all know, blew up, became like one of the premier pillars of science fiction. But it was just like he got rejected heaps before finding that the publisher for it. So and there's millions. I know there's other stories like that. Yeah.
To touch on what Chad just put in there real quick, that is a great thing too. Is I love when I put a call out in like, hey, we're going to this convention, and I'd love to hear some game pitches. If you send me your sell sheet or whatever you have ahead of time, I can, not waste anybody's time, yours or mine, if it's not a good fit. But like, if they're ones we really want to see, then we can sit down and take that time. And that way I can say, hey, you might actually want to pitch it to Ravensburger or Renegade or whoever. I think that's a better fit for you. And that way it just makes everything more efficient, I think, for everyone all around.
Yeah. Excellent points.
Cool. So do you have any upcoming releases or anything that you want to tell us about from Skybound or whatever you're personally working on?
Yeah, we have actually, I think, 7 releases this year. The first one is, I'll pull up my little cute box here. I love the little packaging. We have this really cute packaging called Wine Night. It's by a brand new designer, Jennifer Everett, and you're sharing stories, and it's really a conversation starter party game for 2 to 8 players. There's questions in here, and you ask a question, and then everyone goes around and shares like the most obnoxious or most funny stories that they can possibly think of. So we just have these cute little cards. And then everyone votes on who they think had the funniest or most relatable story. And you're just collecting these cards. And I found that it's like one of those cool things where it's like kind of an icebreaker too, if you don't know everybody and you're going somewhere, just because it gets you opening up. And it's also like a really fun thing to take to a restaurant if you're just sitting down, because it's so casual that you can play while you're waiting for your food and then put it away as soon as the food comes out and pick it up again when you're done. So
will you be offering a companion book that tells you what bottles of wine to drink while playing the game, like, you know, what pairs well with the game?
That would be very, very cool. It is already available.
Very thematically appropriate.
Yes, you can get this from your friendly local game store, on Skybound.com, on Amazon.
What about your friendly local bottle shop?
I would love to see this in Total Wine or Bevmo here in California. So that is something I am actually going to look into, because I think that'd actually be a really cool thing if we can get this.
There you go. Happy to help.
Yeah. Well, it's all right. I'll get my royalty check later. Cool.
And then our next game coming out, this is a game of deduction and seduction. It is called Booty Call. If you see, there's a nice little butt on the box here for everybody.
Awesome.
We have pre-orders open right now on Skybound.com. And it will go live April 5th from our website and Amazon.
That one, I believe, is designed by the wonderful Dan Stong.
Yes, our very own Dan Stong that works at Skybound. You are playing as lonely mediums, and you are trying to hook up with some sexy ghosts, and you are using charades, tapping, facial expressions, and doing different things to try to guess which ghost they are that's on the table. And so it's quite hysterical. And then everyone takes a turn. So then, as everyone is the medium and you are the ghost, after someone guesses or doesn't guess which ghost you are, then the next player takes the turn as being the ghost player.
Wow.
Chad apparently played Booty Call last year.
Oh, awesome. It is hysterical.
You mentioned that this is a tangent only because you got me thinking. So you've mentioned a couple of times that selling the games on Amazon as well as like your website and through local stores. In Australia, Amazon isn't quite as prevalent as it is in the US, but it is still here. Is that something that, like, because we work with Launch Lab, we're working with a lot of people who are doing small batch games, like they're just, they're not doing huge print runs. Is Amazon worth investigating, do you think, if you're a small publisher, like self-publisher or like a, whatever, or is it more better for companies that have larger, inventory, like larger print runs, or do you have any insight into that at all?
So Amazon, as I understand, is like US Amazon is for US, and like there's like Germany Amazon, Canada Amazon, and can you if you're in Australia, can you create an account to buy off of ours or no?
Yes.
Okay, so you can.
Kinda, you can create an account.
I've bought from US Amazon.
Because I have bought from Germany Amazon before, so I wondered if you could buy from ours. Okay, so I do think it's worth it. I think Amazon reaches those places where, your local game stores necessarily haven't picked it up yet. And it gets, I just think because Amazon is such a conglomerate, I'll say. It just reaches, I think, the further corners of the world. And so I think having that visibility on there, I think Amazon is just that global reach for everybody.
Yeah. And if you're in a market like Australia, where we don't get everything released here, then...
Well, it got on my radar partly from what you said, and then we also had, there's a Facebook and a real group called Tabletop Game Designers Australia, so a lot of Australian game designers, talk in there, and there's some people in there who released a game called the Sound Game, and they put it on Amazon, and their whole initial print run sold out within like, I think, an hour or less than an hour or something like that.
Incredible.
Like it was just, and so they were then having to, scramble to kind of like get more prints done and stuff. And it was just like, their game's like a party game, like it's a, a light game. So kind of maybe it fit that, marketplace. But it was one of those things that got in my radar of like, I've never really thought about getting onto Amazon and treating that as another place to kind of sell games. So I don't know.
I think of Amazon as like an octopus with that tentacles that just reach, like it hugs the globe and it reaches just the far corners where like they might not have access to other things, but they have access to Amazon.
Yeah, cool. All right. Was there one more question and then we'll move on to the wrapping up?
I had a last one. Alana, did you have a last one?
No questions from me.
Cool. Oh, I've got another one.
Alrighty.
Wanna
Okay,
do
go
the
far away.
questionnaire?
Yeah,
Wanna do the questionnaire?
you're just
No, I'm
like
asking
I
Tricia.
feel, I
I
feel like
warned her that this was gonna
Yes,
be
yes.
gonna
I
ask you some really
actually,
dumb
yes.
questions.
I
No,
didn't
no.
realize
There's nothing I
it was a
love more
choice,
than
Kate. It's happening no matter
No, it's
what.
not.
I'm
It's
sorry.
not.
there is nothing I
It's
love
totally not a
more
choice.
than silly questions.
So we have the Materialise questionnaire, which is 5 questions that we will absolutely use to define, our perception
Who I
of you
am?
going
We're
forward
totally
and
judging
your
you.
standing in the community.
Oh goodness. Okay.
So the
No
the
pressure.
first no pressure,
No
but
pressure.
lots of pressure. So the
Mm.
first question: are you more of a heart, a diamond, a club, or a spade?
Oh, that's easy. I'm definitely a heart. And I'll tell you it's because I am that person on social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever. I heart everybody's everything because I try to bring joy. I try to bring joy and positivity to everyone. And like, even if I can't respond to every comment from everyone's posts, that's like my little way that I just like try to bring a little
That's
joy to
a
people's lives.
fantastic answer.
Yeah, it's
Perfect.
true. Can confirm.
Question number 2: dinosaurs who are pirates or robots who are ghosts?
Well, if I was playing unfair, we're gonna have to go with dinosaurs who are pirates.
Great answer. I love both answers though.
I love dinosaurs. I will, because we're on a dinosaur. Since I answered dinosaurs, I need to know your favorite dinosaur.
Okay, Parasaurolophus is my favorite dinosaur, which is the duck-billed one with like a thing that heads out. But lately, and I know that this is maybe giving too much away, I think Stegosaurus might be creeping up there for me. I think Stegosaurus is just very cool. But yeah. What
I
about
love
you?
Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus is very cool. But really, they're all dinosaurs. They rock.
What about you, Tricia? What's your favorite?
I love the Velociraptor. I just think they're so badass. But I still Stegosaurus was my favorite dinosaur growing up. And like I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know why I think about dinosaurs so much. But I was thinking about the other day. And I was thinking about how much like I feel like my Stegosaurus like favorite needs to make a comeback. And so I love that yours is that too. And I was like,
I love that they named the spiky bits on the end of the tail the Thagomizer after the Far Side cartoon. This is called the Thagomizer after the late Thag Simmons. It's just we didn't give it a name, so we'll just call it the Thagomizer now. It's so good.
I love it.
Martin, we'll come back to your question in a sec.
All right, question number 3. What is your favorite snack or drink when playing a tabletop game?
Okay, so I hate anything like Cheetos or Doritos because I just don't want someone touching my things, so I don't like to eat them either. Is it because
of the staining?
Yes.
Or the greasy?
Yes, it's the grease and the stain. Right. I try to stick with things like pretzels. Also because I love salty snacks, and maybe I've always been a pretzel person, but I feel like they're the least likely culprit to leave something on a card or a board. And so that is always my go-to snack. Drinks, I drink a lot of water. I drink a lot of water all the time. If I don't want water, just plain water, often I will put like the water packets in, and I do love like a good iced tea.
There you go. Water is very, especially if you're doing a long game session, I think water is a very important thing.
Pretty important.
Okay, question number 4: cards or dice?
Hands down, dice.
We can't be friends anymore.
This is such a divisive question. It's like
there's something that I just love about shaking a million dice. But to be fair, I'm also a miniatures game player and a war gamer. And so I really love, I love hex and counter games. And I love, the measured movement miniatures games, not games that just have miniatures. And I love the games where they have like 12 dice, and I love just like shaking a lot of dice. That's just my jam.
Fantastic.
Yeah, all right, we can be friends. That's fine.
Question number 5: what fictional character would you invite to a game night?
That is a really hard question.
It is, isn't it?
That is a very hard question. Oh goodness.
Well, how about we leave you to think about it for 30 seconds while we go and look at a couple of comments.
Yes.
So Martin popped in a bit late and said, I'm not sure if I missed this since I came a bit late, but burning question, as a publisher, where do you get your audience? Following up, as in where do they follow you? Estimated numbers from various platforms. How do you get interest? How do people hear about your games?
Well, so Skybound Tabletop is a division of Skybound Entertainment. So Skybound Entertainment has a very large following on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They just reopened their Reddit as well. And so, we're the offshoot of that. And as in we have our own separate channels, but then we can get amplified from the parent Skybound Entertainment channels as well, and also Skybound Games, which is our video game division. So we don't just have to utilize our audience, and then we also have Skybound Insiders, and so anyone who signs up as an insider on our newsletter, we can send it out to them as well, and that's large numbers as the overall, so we can quantify of like, if I'm sending out a letter, I can send out to everybody who likes everything. I can send out to people who just like tabletop. And that's where we find our audience at.
I think the importance of newsletters is something that a lot of me, I know I forget about, and I think other people forget, is that they can be a really effective way to communicate with fans and your audience. And especially if you can target it, like you just said, to the interest, like people who care about that specific thing. Yeah. Okay, you had a few seconds, and you got a distraction as well with that question. What fictional character would you invite to a game night?
Okay, so circling back to the beginning of this whole conversation, it's going to have to be Angela Lansbury. And as she plays Jessica Fletcher.
One.
Oh, okay, all right.
As Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote. Like, that's I grew up watching that show with my grandma. And her character as Jessica Fletcher, like I even read the books that they had, like the Murder, She Wrote books growing up. I just love murder mysteries, and so I think that'd be so fun. Also, fun fact is at Universal Studios, the town of Cabot Cove shares their water with Jaws.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
It is half Jaws and half Cabot Cove in that thing, and that cracked me up.
That's brilliant.
Excellent.
Chad answered the question as well.
Yeah, Chad, stop answering the
Oh,
questions
yeah.
because I'm not going to be able to invite you on the show and make you answer the questions.
Chad,
So
I will
stop.
tell you.
He'll just have to come up with different
I have
answers.
to come up with
that's all.
different answers.
I will tell Chad and everyone else listening a little secret. I love Indiana Jones so much growing up. We used to make home movies of Indiana Jones. We write scripts, and we'd actually film in my aunt's basement, and somewhere in her house there is the giant VHS tapes of all the movies that we ever made. I always played Marion and a guard.
I heard that the new movie tells us what happened to Marion. Like they're bringing that character back.
I am
in some
so
way.
excited. And
is there another
no,
movie coming
great.
out?
Yeah,
is there another
is.
Indiana
Summer.
No,
What?
The summer.
it's the last one.
I gotta admit, I rewatched the Crystal Skull one not that long ago, and I was reminded why I'd never really got into it. Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
Just pretend that one didn't exist, and we're good.
Well, see, my experience of that movie was I saw it in the cinema with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and we got to the last like 15 minutes, and the video feed cut out, but the audio stayed. So all of us in the cinema are hearing the end of the movie, but not able to see it. They couldn't fix it, so they eventually closed it all down and get everyone out. And they gave us all free tickets to come and see another movie as an apology. But so for years, I didn't actually know how it ended. I just had heard it, not seen it, because I was it's so silly.
It's probably a good thing.
Not great, but we'll forgive it. We'll pretend that one. We're gonna go like 1, 2, 3, 5. Kind of how we did in Star Wars, where like no one really wants to own the Clone Wars, and so.
See, I'm one of the oddballs. I find the prequels, I like everything about them except for the love story. If there was an edit that cut out the love story, and it was just about the politics and just about the actual kind of like the war itself.
Can we talk about the midichlorians? Because that.
I think they're fine. I'm fine with midichlorians.
But that scene where it's like, am I watching Star Wars or The Sound of Music? Like I wasn't sure where I was.
I know when they're on Naboo and like, yeah, I know.
They're like frolicking through the fields, and you're like,
it's terrible.
What am I watching?
It's terrible, definitely terrible. But like, I really do love the Senate stuff and like all that kind of political, the maneuvering. Like that part, I think is wonderful. So
that's what I've really enjoyed about Andor as well, is that they've been giving us glimpses into this stuff that's going on around. So
and the Clone Wars cartoon series was quite good as well. And
the cartoon series, I think, was better than the movie for sure. Star Wars Rebels,
I don't know if it's better, but like
Star Wars Rebels is like icing on the cake. And when
Rebels
Ahsoka comes out and we find out what happens to Ezra Bridger, I cannot wait.
Are they doing an Ahsoka show?
Yes, later this fall. Yeah. I think it's in fall.
We need to do a spin-off podcast just about pop culture. I think I've decided with us, like that's our new thing. We'll do the Tricia and Kate and Eris and Alana pop culture podcast.
Just call it.
We might dilute our audience.
Nerd pop.
No, we'll grow our audience. Grow our audience, Alana. Grow, not dilute. All right. Well, thank you all, especially Tricia, for taking your time and answering all those questions and everything. And thank you, Kate and Alana, for being with me again. And thank you. Extra special thank you to all of our people commenting in our chat and on who have joined us for the stream. It's been really good to hear you and see you. If you would like to follow along with anything else to do with Launch Tabletop, we highly recommend you check out our Discord, which is at ltt.ltd/s/discord. We can talk about both printing and production stuff there. You can talk about Launch Lab and anything else that Launch Tabletop is doing, but obviously also just normal broadly game topics. We love to talk about games and hear what you have to say. Yes, if you also have any questions or thoughts, feel free to send them through to info@launchtabletop.com. If there's somebody that you really would like to have us if you're someone who you would like us to try and get on the show, let us know and we'll do our best. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please give us a like and follow on the channel. That would really help. And yes, if you do sign up if you go check out Launch Lab at launchtabletop.com, then you can use the code Materialise in checkout to get 20% off your next order. And I'm Eris. I've been your host, and this has been Materialise, the Launch Tabletop podcast. And we will see you all.
Where can we find Tricia?
Yes, we didn't do that at all. I'm so sorry. Oh boy, I was so good with some of this stuff. Okay. Yeah, Tricia, you're on Twitter.
I am on Twitter. You can find me at Tricia Sydney on Twitter. The same on Facebook. Probably half of you are already friends with me on there. So I'm probably most active on Twitter, though, is the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Nice. And Skybound itself is just skybound.com, and you can check out everything that they do there. There is a lot. And check out those games that Tricia showed us earlier, which are for sale or soon to be for sale.
Go play some Ghost Tinder.
Ghost
Tinder. It's really Ghost Tinder.
That's like the 2-word elevator pitch for the game.
Yes.
Perfect.
You want to know how to pitch a game? Be Ghost Tinder. Done.
Ghost Tinder, yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, and we will finish this up. So goodbye.
See you next week.
Thanks.